Let's get you out to America's Radio Newsline. Standing by is Scott Mandia. He's a professor of physical science at Suffolk County Community College. Mr. Mandia, welcome back to America's Radio News.
Well, welcome. I'm glad you have me back, Chris and Dan. I appreciate it.
Well,
Thank you.
Professor, we want to ask you about as the hurricane was bearing down. I mean, the worst case scenario was that it was going to make landfall as a Category 3, Category 4, and it didn't do that. It made landfall as a Category 2. What was primarily responsible for the downgrade in the strength of this hurricane?
Well, just before it hit land in North Carolina, a little bit of dry air entered in the storm, and something called wind shear, where you get a little too much wind aloft, kind of tears the top off. It's almost like putting something in the exhaust pipe of your car. It just doesn't make the engine go as well. And so the eye kind of fell apart, and it didn't quite get enough chance to regenerate its eye before it made landfall. And then because it hugged the coast, a good part of the storm wasn't over the warm water anymore, and it just couldn't get its oomph back.
But while it wasn't the Category 3, maybe even 4 that we were expecting, Professor, I'm going to compare it to Andrew, which was a fast and fierce storm. I mean, that just plowed across the Florida Peninsula like 30 miles per hour, lots of destruction, but it was the wind and not the rain. With Irene, it was slow, and even though it slowed down even more, that just let it dump all that tropical rain, and we're seeing the effects of it today in Vermont. So even though it was a slower storm, it was just as catastrophic.
Right, and one thing that I'm seeing now, and I've even some friends of mine are saying, oh, it wasn't that bad, and you certainly can't say that to the 5 million people without power or families that have lost loved ones or the flooding rains, but we're all fixated on the number. What's the wind speed? Because it's very easy to focus on that number, and in fact, when Irene made landfall just around Coney Island, it was a tropical storm, 65 miles per hour. People are like, wow, it's not that bad, and I did a couple of interviews, and I said the rain doesn't know what the wind speed is. All of the rain that's in that storm, whether it's a Category 3 or a tropical storm, still had to come down. So I think we got in trouble on this one because we fixated on the wind when all along, I believe I even said it on the show last time,
Sure.
The floods were going to be the biggest issue of this storm. And that doesn't change when the wind speeds slow down.
And we had a guy swimming up on a street in Queens. I mean, that was because of surge, right? That was another problem.
That's correct. And let me, for those of you who are listening out there now, look at a corner of a room that you're in right now, and imagine one wall is Long Island, New York, and imagine the other wall is New Jersey. Now you've got 3 or 4 feet of water coming in one wall, 3 or 4 feet in the other. Manhattan's in that corner, so the only place the water can go is up.
Oh.
So a regular 3 or 4 foot storm surge is going to be doubled for New York City because of this 90-degree angle effect that they get.
And we can hope and pray that this is not what we're going to see in Vermont, but the most victims of hurricanes don't occur because of the winds, don't occur because of anything else. It's because of the flooding.
It's because of the flooding. It's primarily the storm surge along the coast because you have, 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet cube of water, which is a cubic yard. That weighs 1,700 pounds. So you can imagine every 3 feet of storm surge, it's 1,700 pounds banging away, banging away. So storm surge does do a lot of damage at the coast. But then far away, we've seen bridges out, we've seen dams are breaking. People who are far away from the ocean also can be impacted, especially the size of Irene. It was huge.
We're having a conversation here with Professor Scott Mandia. He's also a member of the Climate Science Response Team, and wanted to get your reaction, sir, to something that a lot of folks have been classifying as something that's very exciting about a new way of looking at the effects of the warming planet here. And it was a study that was put out by CERN, which I know you know, these guys that put together that atom smasher, the 8,000 scientists over there. And they outlined what seemed to say that the cosmic rays do have an effect. And again, this is external cosmic rays coming from outer space and hitting Earth, have an effect at our cloud development here on planet Earth, and that could really severely affect our climate and our temperature around the globe. What's your reaction to that? To what some are classifying as an exciting new way of looking at climate science?
Well, it certainly has an effect. If I'm standing on a bathroom scale, I weigh 170 pounds. If a fly lands on there, technically it has an effect, but it's negligible. This paper is like a fly on that scale. In fact, recently, the author was on Nature on a podcast, and he said that unequivocally, the effects he observed in his research would only occur in the uppermost atmosphere where clouds actually don't even form. And he said, quote, "You cannot use my research to make any definitive statements on the effect of cosmic rays on climate." So when the author tells you that, that means everybody else is kind of spinning it. The analogy I'll draw also is it's kind of like we all love to be able to take a pill in the morning and be able to eat steak as much as we want and not gain any weight because it's easy. Unfortunately, there's nothing easy about this. The physics tells us we keep adding carbon dioxide, it's going to get warmer. And even if clouds have more of an effect than we think, we're still going to have the carbon dioxide. It doesn't go away in that sense.
Yeah, and you know what? And the good news about that, about eating steak, you can eat more chocolate. According to the British Medical Journal, 33% lower risk of developing heart disease. So there you go. There's
That's
a positive.
Right. You got to have your little bit of port wine right after.
There you
All
go.
right.
Hey, Mr. Mandia,
chocolate.
I like the way you think, sir. I appreciate it. Scott Mandia, he's a professor of physical sciences at Suffolk County Community College. Thank you very much, sir, for your insights today on not only Irene, but on that report as well. We appreciate it.